Hello and welcome back. This is Sherry with Heart and Soulful in the studio today with another video on our stencil making series. So if you're just joining me for the first time, welcome. I hope if you enjoyed this video, you'll give me a thumbs up, click on subscribe, and if you'd like a notification when I post something new, click on the little bell. I'm going to put the entire playlist to this series down in the description in case you are just finding this one for the first time. I started at the very beginning, basic, making stencils with, I'm using my Cricut Maker and Cricut Design Space, but I also have tips and some demos at the beginning of some of those earlier videos. If you don't have any cutting machine and you're making handmade stencils, just manually cutting them. So I didn't do that in the last video, but I do have something fun for those of you who are hand cutting your stencils for today's video. So the very first video I did in this series was an introduction, and I kind of showed the stencils that I had made to that point. I'm just brand new to all this, maybe been doing a little month and a half, something like that. And so I had put together my resource binder of stencils that I had made and decided to do this series kind of starting at the beginning as I was figuring things out, and then expanding, adding in other software and that sort of thing. So in the last video, we covered my most favorite current way to make stencils is to use fonts that you have available either through Cricut Design Space or whatever software you're using. You already have some on your computer. I did have a couple of stencils that we were playing around with on the computer at the end of that video, and I've gone ahead and cut those. So I wanted to show you how those turned out. So to start with, I had cut these two that I had made using an alphabet, and I think these were both with the same letter, same font, and just arranged in two different ways so that the stencils look similar style, obviously, kind of vibe, but they look very different because I just arranged things differently. This is the one that I was working on the video with you. And then this is another one I think I may have done after, but this is this one printed on the gel plate. And I wasn't sure what color I wanted to use to do the final pull, so I did half of it in one color and half of it in the other color just to kind of give some contrast. So I really like how that one turned out. This is the other one that I ended up going ahead and cutting yesterday, and I really like how it turned out too. And I also did one because we were doing the alphabet, using the fonts to do. I wanted to show you that they don't all have to be this kind of frilly looking, to me these look like Victorian wallpaper kind of patterns and that sort of thing. They don't all have to be that kind of style. These were just the fonts I was choosing were those kind of ornate fonts. So you can also choose something that's just really simple and get something like this. So those were my last two that I've been working on of alphabet font stencils. So today I thought my video today was going to go a little different, but then Cricut Design Space came out with a new feature. And so I want to address that because it kind of goes along with the last video. So I think what I'll do in this one, I was going to talk about inspiration, and I'm going to still do that, but then I'm going to go onto the computer again and show you two things. One is the new Cricut tool that they have, and then the other thing is for people who are doing hand cut stencils, a way that you can design them on your computer and then hand cut them out. And it was a surprise to me. I'm not really sure how I even stumbled across it, but I was playing around with a question I had in my own mind, and I discovered something I didn't know. So I'm going to share that with you today too. So about inspiration though, just to show you this part of it. In my introduction video, I showed you the stencils that I had made so far, and one of them was inspired by these two vintage iron grate windows that I have. And once you start making these stencils, when you're doing these repeating patterns, if you're like me, you start to see that everywhere you look. And so when I first started making stencils, you kind of learn the tools like we've done so far, but then, and you're having so much fun, but you kind of like, okay, well, what kind of stencils do I want? What do I want to make? What patterns do I think would look good as a stencil? And you'll catch yourself looking at everything as pattern. So I kind of wanted to share how you would find that inspiration, and then how you would take that inspiration and maybe take it apart to figure out, like reverse engineer it to see what shapes you need to do to create that pattern. And then also just taking the inspiration and coming up with something totally different. So it doesn't have to look exactly like the thing that got you inspired. And so I have some examples of that too that I want to show before we go onto the computer. So I don't know how good these photos are going to be, but you can see this one is basically circles all stacked, and then they're connected with a little rectangle, and then there is a long rectangle in between each set of circles. So that's how I built my stencil, because I really just wanted that exact pattern. So it's just really kind of taking the pattern apart and then figuring out on your design space how you can put those together to keep that repeating pattern and make it even throughout your whole page. And there's tricks to that, but we've kind of gone over all the tools. So I just kind of want to show you how you would look at things. So this one, kind of a weird wavy shape, and then it has these little connectors. And to me, this one was a little different because I had to kind of try to see if I could find that sort of kind of Moroccan looking shape. And it's not a shape that is in your basic shapes. I didn't even find it in the expanded shapes. I kind of had to go outside of Cricut Design Space and find that basic shape. So we're going to kind of work into that. Maybe not in this video. We'll see how much time we have. But I have shown you how to upload shapes into Cricut Design Space. So if you're familiar with what an SVG file is, it's a file format that shows black and white. So I do have a poor example here, but these lines are my print. It needs to be cleaned, but I went ahead and printed this out. An SVG would be a shape that is a black shape on a white background. And that's what one of the things that you can upload into Cricut and then manipulate those shapes. This was not done on Cricut Design Space. This is what I'm going to show you later on. But I guess my point is, if you find those SVG files, or we learn how to save shapes as SVG files, you'll be able to upload those and then work with those for your repeating pattern. So we're going to kind of explore that a little bit. So this was the first one that I had done, and then I made it a little bit small, or I made it small and then I think I made it bigger. But really just with those rectangles and then using the Unite tool that we've gone over before. So, these came up from this first panel's inspiration. And then last week we're gone for a few days to do spring cleaning before the wedding. And I took some pictures in the hotel we stayed in, because now, like I said, everything I look at, I kind of look at the shape and how I can take it apart and maybe make a stencil out of it. So there was this quatrefoil mirror in our room, and I thought, well, that's super easy. It's just 4 circles that are the same size, and then put a square on top of that and meld them together, and that can be, turn it into a frame, and that could be a pattern. So I did what I wanted to show in this example was doing the exact quatrefoil, with my proportions, which are a little bit different than those proportions. But that's where you're just inspired by a design, and then you can just adjust it to what looks good to your eye. So that's kind of what I did here, where it's just that simple pattern. And this would be kind of using this as inspiration and making kind of a matched stencil. But then you can take that same pattern and, like we've done before, overlap it differently, and then you get a completely different pattern. So this one, flip this over so you can see it better. So this was still taking that same quatrefoil shape, but then overlapping it to the previous one. And it ends up, when you look at this, you end up really kind of seeing these 4-petaled flowers, to me, more than you see the quatrefoil anymore. So this is, using that same inspiration, but instead of copying the way it looks, just being inspired by it and creating a different design. This is the same exact thing, and it's just, again, if you can see the shape in here, it's right here, and it's just they're overlapped all the way. So it kind of gives you this sort of keyhole effect too, and I really like that one. So 3 completely different looking stencils from one inspiration. And then here's how they looked, the basic one, and then this was the kind of keyhole one, and then the flower one I ended up really liking too, so I did it in 2 colors. And then the other thing in that room was the carpet. This is the carpet in our hotel room, and this is what I wanted to show you. So the other ones were kind of obvious where the patterns, you know, to reverse engineer it. You know, this was obvious because it was a circle, you know, 4 circles, and they're the same size, and then a square. I mean, that was obvious. This one, I had to really look at it because your eye might want to do, you know, a shape kind of, I think a pen would be easier because then you can see. Okay, you might look at this and say this is kind of a shape like, you know, this, and it comes over, and it has kind of that same quatrefoil shape. I'm not drawing this very good. You know, it could be like, maybe you would take it apart this way, and you kind of look at it that way. Well, when I really got to looking at this, if you look closely, it's really this shape and this shape connected. And that's the whole thing. You know, there's one there, and then there's one here, and there's one here. And you start to see how those shapes connected together ended up creating this pattern that looks totally different. So here I would have my old brain would have thought this is one shape. And that those were lined up next to each other. And that would have been the harder thing to try to figure out on a design space to create that shape. You know, I would have been doing, oh, here's a U, and here's kind of a seagull looking shape, and then another one. Well, in reality, it was really just 2 U's or 2 C's or 2 horseshoes that were just united and then lined up, alternating on the rows, and it created this pattern. So that was kind of fun to figure that out. And so I guess my whole point to this is when you look at something the first time, what might be the obvious, what looks like the obvious shape, if you really kind of take it apart and look at it differently, it may be much simpler than you think to create it. So to create this one then, actually I ended up doing this first one, not with a font, but with a horseshoe. So I went and found a horseshoe shape, just a simple horseshoe. And then I kind of distorted it a little bit because I didn't want it to be exactly, you know, like the carpet. So I just did these 2 horseshoe shapes, united them together. And then, you know, so here's one, here's another one, here's another one. And then they alternate on the next row. And then you go back. So we've done that before in making stencils. And then you just make sure they overlap enough to unite them. And there you have another stencil. So that was kind of a fun one to figure out. And then I just printed it on here, playing around with doing some layering. I do like to have some stencils that have a lot of open space, just so you can layer other stencils behind it. And it just kind of makes an interesting paper. So that was this one, and I wanted to do something with the same inspiration but do it completely different, and I came up with this stencil, which is going to shock you that this was the same inspiration, and this is what I ended up with. I know it doesn't look anything like it, but what I did was because I figured a U, a C, a horseshoe, any of those would work if they were kind of the right shape, and I happened to come across a C that I liked. Instead of being a C that looked like, where's my pen? Instead of a C that looked like that, it had like this little curly Q on it. So it was kind of just like a fancier C like that. And so I thought, oh, that could be kind of fun. So, you know, if I imagined it this way and then did the other one, you know, kind of flipped it so it went that way, and then interlock them, kind of aiming for that original pattern, what would that look like, you know, as I played around with it. And I ended up overlapping it different, but I really loved that. It just kind of had a nice modern swirly look to it. So I really like that. And then this is it printed out. So it just, you know, taking the same inspiration, you don't have to copy the thing. You can copy it, but then you can also just let your imagination take it somewhere. Now, when I made this one, I should point out my little mistake. You can see that my frame is not connected. For one thing, I tore it down here when I was pulling it off the mat, but it was much too thin of a frame for how fragile this stencil was. I needed to have made it thicker and made this overlap better, and then it wouldn't have all broken apart that way. So I think I love this one, so I think I'll actually cut it again with a wider frame around it, so it's a little more sturdy, because it's kind of fragile right now. So that was another one. Same inspiration, two completely different looks. And the one thing I have learned to do for myself, I'm kind of figuring it out, is when you come up with a shape, we had talked about this before in Cricut Design Space. I had not figured out how I could copy and paste, from one canvas to another canvas. We had the brilliant idea from one of the comments to take a screenshot and then isolate that, remove the background, all that, and have it be an upload. As long as it's in your uploads in Cricut Design Space, you can grab it from there and put it onto your canvas. And you can take another shape that you also have in your uploads and put it onto a canvas. You just can't take from one canvas and put onto another canvas. So we did find that way around it. I've gone over that in a previous video. If you want me to go over that in more detail, I think a good thing is, since we're kind of moving from the first half of this series into some maybe more complicated things, we're going to kind of leave behind this repeating pattern sort of idea and move on to some other things that are more maybe organic and random, and where it's just not a repeated pattern, different shapes on a stencil. So as we move into that, if you have any questions about what we've covered so far, let me know in the comments of this video, and then that way if I need to address anything, I'll maybe do that in a video kind of addressing any questions from the first half before we get into this whole other thing, because I'm going to be introducing some other software and that kind of stuff. So it's going to kind of go off on a whole other, we'll call that Stencil 2.0 or something. Okay, so another place that I had found inspiration, when you travel, or, like I was in that hotel, and you can walk around your house and find all kinds of patterns. So, look at tile patterns, wood floor, the way it's laid, brick patterns, the way it's laid, just all kinds of things for inspiration. I had taken pictures when I travel. A lot of times I was taking pictures of architectural elements and doors and that kind of thing, just because I wasn't even doing any of this then, but I just always had a thing for patterns. And so I would take pictures of all kinds of random things, thinking someday I might want those for inspiration. And so I've pulled out, for this first kind of series of stencils that I want to make, I want to do them inspired by a trip to Morocco. And so I took one of my photos, and it's all blurry. It's not, I've had to zoom in on it. So the quality of the photo itself isn't good, but I don't care. I just need to be able to isolate a pattern that I want to maybe deconstruct. So I just took this one as an example, and it's just, this little different pattern of wood on this kind of balcony thing. So I took that one, and I ended up with this stencil. I did another one and I haven't cut it, but what I was going to say before was, once you build a pattern, which in this one the repeat is just this part, one square, and then you laid them out side by side. What I've started to do is, when I have just that first pattern piece, or even just a shape, two shapes put together, is go ahead and save that and upload it as an upload shape. And I have a file in my Cricut Design Space that's for shapes. I have one for stencils and I have one for shapes. That way I could take this shape and maybe make a whole different stencil without having to recreate this shape again, because sometimes this is the tedious part. And once you have one, you can lay it, cut it up, whatever you want to do with it. So I actually have cut this one, but then I actually did this whole stencil on the diagonal, so it's more like diamond shapes all across, same exact thing, but it's a much a smaller pattern. I did more in a row kind of thing, and they're that staggered look, So I'll maybe cut that. I just haven't done it yet, but anyway, I like how this one turned out. It kind of has a craftsman kind of feel to it. So I kind of did it in those kind of colors for this one. And then I had chosen some really bad colors. I'm going to do a series maybe on gel printing, and I'm still learning and mixing colors on all that kind of thing. But if you started one and you just really think, oh, I just don't like how these colors are going to be at all, don't give up on it. And I went ahead and printed these just to show. So I had so much paint on my gel plate. I did not like the colors that I had put together at all. I've been trying to work with a little more green. For some reason, it's funny because green's one of my favorite colors, but it's one of the colors that I don't play around with a lot on my gel plate. I'm not really adventurous with mixing those colors. So I really want to try to do that more. And so that's what I was doing. I was playing around, but I didn't like my results. So I just took a piece of scrap paper that had actually already had another failed print on it. And then I just pulled up part of it, not even really wanting to get all the paint up, because I thought, when things turn out really bad, just make them really grungy and then you'll like it. Because mostly we're just taking little parts to use in collage anyway. So this was my failed one. And then I just pulled the rest of the paint off. When you are I use a lot of rice paper, but even also like bakery tissue and deli paper and that sort of thing. Those thin ones are really good for getting the rest of your paint up. So after I had pulled part of the paint up with this, I just went in with some silver over that to pull up the rest of it. And so again, I have just kind of two grungy papers. So, don't give up when you mix colors that you really don't like, because you'll be able to find something to use for it. So that was that inspiration. I want to do some. These are some old doors, and I really kind of like this pattern too. It's like with a pointed star and then just some different shapes. I don't know if you can see this. I'm gonna try to get close. I even kind of looked at this as, if you look at the corners, it's 4 corners, and those corners are really kind of like a heart with an X in the middle of it. So really, if you took those 4 things, you put them together, and that's what made that star shape. So I guess my point is, as you look at things, maybe don't look at the first obvious thing you see, which is the star. It was really these 4 corners and the design of those that put together made that star. So anyway, that's my point about inspiration, and then where you can find it, looking anywhere for inspiration, and then looking at it, not just how it looks when it caught your eye, but then taking that shape that you make and making something inspired by, but not a copy of what you saw. So that is kind of that part of this tutorial. And then this sheet here that I printed out and I started to cut out, I just do not have the patience to manually cut out stencils, but that's why I got my Cricut. And I wanted to show this, and I'm going to show this on the computer. We'll go over there in just a sec. But this was done on my word processing program. And so for those of you who don't have a cutting machine and have the patience to cut things out, you don't have to come up with the ideas or hand draw them. I would be horrible at that, but you can design them on your computer, print them out onto cardstock. Cardstock's actually a really good stencil. This one was something I had cut out of my Cricut. This is just a bunch of circles, and it was just done on craft cardstock. But this is really sturdy because it has layers of paint on it now. So there's nothing wrong with making stencils out of cardstock. You can do them out of regular copy paper, but they're just thinner and more fragile until they get layers of paint built up. If you have a cardstock that's not too heavyweight, then that might be easy enough to cut with an X-Acto knife, and you might like that better than trying to cut thin things like this. So let's go over to the computer. I'm going to show you how you can use whatever word processing program you have. Now, I don't obviously know your computer and what you have, but I'm using a MacBook Pro. So the word processor that comes with Apple computers is Pages. And so I don't know if Word or, what other Microsoft software programs for word processing, but Pages I was actually shocked when I looked at this. And so let's go to the computer so I can show you what I mean. So here we are in Pages, and I've already started one just to kind of show you and save time, just to show you the way this is going to work. So all I have up here is I just did a new blank document, and I was playing around and I just stumbled on this because I've never kind of explored any of these things up here. What I suggest is don't be afraid of exploring your computer. It would be hard, I think, to mess anything up, especially when you're just doing a document, something like that. You're not going to ruin the program, put it that way. So don't be intimidated by it. Just play around. that's how I learn things. A lot of times I'm just exploring what my computer can do, and I stumble across things. And they're usually pretty intuitive, at least with the Apple it is. So I was playing around with a blank page, and then I saw a shape, and I thought, what is that? So you click on it, and look what you get, all these shapes. So it's kind of like, in Cricut Design Space, if you had that, you got just the basic shapes. This one has them all basic, and they're categorized then. So you can scroll through all of them, or you can kind of pick a topic and see what is available there. But you just get all sorts of things, and there's these ornaments, all different sorts of shapes. So, we know how to, in Cricut Design Space, do the unite and cut and exclude and all that kind of subtract, all that kind of stuff. Well, big surprise, your word processing program can do the same thing. I had no idea. So I took just a circle shape, and these are not connected together or anything yet, but I did exactly the same thing that we did in Cricut Design Space. And I took, let me just get rid of this one maybe and show you. Okay, so over here is going to be my tools. So I'm going to grab my shape, grab a circle, and then some tools pop up. Now there's style, which would be what color, if I wanted to change the color of it, opacity, that sort of thing. I'm not going to do all these other ones, but that's your style. And then text would be, if you're typing a text, you're going to have what font you're using and how it's aligned and that sort of thing. We don't need that one either. We want to be in arrange. So the first thing I want to look at is over here in size. It's a circle, so it's even. These two numbers are the same. If I want to use my box to change the size, I want to make sure I have constrained proportions so that it stays a circle. So that way I can just grab a corner and it will stay a circle. If I tried to do that and I did not have constrained proportions, it would become like elliptical. Okay, so let's just make that a nice size. Now I have this blue so you can see it. Let's duplicate that, and what was really convenient is Command D is duplicate in this also, just like in the Cricut Design Space, so I don't have to memorize a different function. So now I have two circles, and let's go back to style, and let's make this one black, and then we're going to go back to arrange, and I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. I want to make sure constrained proportions is clicked, and I've made it a little smaller, and now I want to line it up with my other circle so that we can subtract. So I have that one selected and the blue one selected, and then I'm going to go, to align. Now you have to do two different functions to make it align centered. There's a center, but that is going to be right to left, and then middle, we'll do it top to bottom. So if you click both of those, again, I'm going to show you. I'll move it off. Let me move it off so you can see what I mean. So if I go over here to align, the first little three are left, center, and right. So if I go to center, it's going to center it that direction, but now I want to center it up and down. So top, middle, bottom. Click on middle. Oh, it took me to the middle of my page because I don't have both of these selected. Go back and select the two of those and do middle, and it put them together. Okay, so now I have those two together. Let me make sure that they didn't get moved that way. It did. Okay, so I still have both of those selected. Now I can group them just like you can in Cricut Design Space and move them around together, but they're not united or subtracted or any of that yet. They're just grouped together. So you can group them, you can ungroup them. Okay, so now they're not together, but I still have them both selected. And down here, look what we have. Unite, intersect, subtract, or exclude. So let's do subtract, and there you go. We have a frame, just like we did in Cricut Design Space. So now they're together because it's just a frame. So now I can duplicate that like I've done here, and you can see I'm kind of trying to make sure they overlap again so that we can unite them. And so if I want to take all of these, now I don't know if there's a way to select, oh, there they are. So let's see, what did I do just to do that? I clicked on the page. I want to select all of them. Okay, I kind of put my cursor down and kind of drug it. Ooh, it missed this one though. And then I clicked again and it selected all those, but see, I'm missing some. I'm missing this one, so I'm going to hold down my shift key and click on that one too. Looks like, and I'm missing this one. So I'm not sure how to select all of them. I'll have to maybe figure that out, and then, because I've just been kind of that one. See, some of them weren't selected, so I'm not sure how to grab all of them, but it looks like I have them all selected now. So now I'm going to hit unite down there, and they should all be together. Yep. See, I can move them around. They're all united again. But now I have this group of circles, and let's see, make sure I have it on my page where I want it. Just centered there. And now I can go and print this out. So I would go up to File, Print, and now I can print that out and then just cut those circles out. And you can do the same thing. Let's just go to this page maybe and scroll up. You know, grabbing any kind of shape. So I could go down there to the ornaments maybe. Let's see. Now this might not work. See how these are not really overlapping each other? Also here, if you go up to here, you can flip these just like we did. You can distribute the objects. Like let's say we've given ourselves a few of these. We can select all of them. I'm going to have to find out how to select all of them faster. And I can go to Arrange, and I can go to Align Objects. I don't want to align them all together. Let's align them middle so they even out. And then let's go to Distribute Objects horizontally, and it did the same thing. So this is basically doing all the same functions so far that I can tell, at least most of them, as with Cricut Design Space. So you don't have to have Cricut Design Space. Now, I'm not sure about this because obviously I have it. I had someone mention to me that she has a silhouette and that some of the functions are a little bit different, but she's actually able to save a shape from one canvas, copy and paste it to another one, which Cricut Design Space I haven't figured out how to do. We did find a way around it, obviously, but that's just one difference that she mentioned. And she said a lot of people use Silhouette Design Space to create their designs and then cut them with their Cricut, and upload them from there. So it just makes me wonder, if you don't have Cricut Design Space or Cricut Cutter, if you could design there if you wanted, like say you just thought that was easier, or Silhouette. You don't maybe have to have the machine. You can just use the software to create your designs, print them out on your printer, and then cut them out by hand. So that's just another option. Like I said, I stumbled across this. I don't even know how, but it's just from kind of exploring, this software. So for those of you, play around with this. You'll be able to, just like we did with Cricut Design Space, if I want these to overlap so that they will be one united shape, I could go and grab another little shape. Let's just grab this for fun, put it in there like that, and make sure that these two are, let's see if I have them aligned. I'm going to get rid of these two because grab both of these. Align center, align middle, and now let's see if I unite those. And then I'm going to duplicate it, and I'm going to make it a little smaller. Let's grab both of these, align center, align middle. Let's do subtract. Yeah, perfect. Okay, so I just, decide on a size that you want it to be. I need to move it. It's, for some reason, it doesn't let me grab it from the center and move it. It does that. I have to grab it within the frame part to drag it around. But then I can hit Command D, do another one, and once again, you make them overlap, and then you have a stencil. You could make them overlap like this, whatever you want, and get your repeating pattern. So, stagger them this way if you want, just have them be connected, and then the alternating ones. So it's just, I was just so happy to have found this for all of you that don't have cutting machines and want to cut these by hand. If you have the patience, you can design what you want and then cut them out. So game changer for everyone that's just making their stencils by hand. So let's get out of that. Okay, now I'm in Cricut Design Space. The other thing that I wanted to share today is the new tool that is in Cricut Design Space. So I was just looking at this, and it's kind of funny because I had one complaint about it and they've already fixed it. So that makes me happy. The new tool, you can't see anything because I don't have anything on my canvas, but let's just add a shape and then you can see what I'm talking about. I'm just added a shape, and you can see the new tool here is warp, but it's in gray because, let's see, even if I put another one, the other tool that's in gray is align. Now I know if I click both of these, align works because I just needed two objects, but you see warp is still gray. Warp is not for shapes, it is only for text. Now I'm hoping that because they've added this, that they will eventually add warping shapes, because in a future video, one of my design ideas for stencils involved needing to warp shapes. So I had to do that in Adobe Illustrator. There may be other software programs that you have that will allow you to do that. Maybe even the word processing that we just looked at could do that. I have to play around with that. But that's going to be a future video, and obviously I want to explore that a little bit more before I share what I did to create mine, because I need to find other ways that the rest of you who don't have Cricut Design Space might be able to warp shape. Okay, so if we go to text, since this is a new tool for text, you see as soon as I put the text up, my warp tool became black. So now I can use that tool. So what this does, right now I'm just in my regular font. Let's pick something a little prettier. Maybe let's do this one. This is interesting. Okay, let's make it a little bigger so we could see it. And I don't need all of these letters to show this, so let me just get rid of these. Okay, so what the warp tool does is I have my letter selected, and then I'm going to go up here to warp. It's telling me that this is only accessible if you are an Access subscriber, which I am. So if you don't have the Access subscription, you won't be able to use this tool. So see the little green flag up here. But I'm going to go ahead and show it because, you know, some of you may have this, and I do, so it's kind of another handy tool. So you don't really have control as far as choosing your paths like you do in something like Adobe Illustrator, but they have kind of just these pre-programmed ones. So, you know, this flipped my T so that it made this more rounded, just like this shape. If I do number 2, it's going to do the opposite. It's making it look like a Y. This one, let's see what it does. It does the same thing as the first one. Why is that different? This one's, it must make it a little wider, less of an angle. The other thing you can do is you can do an adjustment here, you know, that kind of changes the shape. But you can go through, there's all different ones. I haven't tried them all, but it's just, you know, ways to kind of a pre-program get different shapes out of your text. So, I mean, this, you know, just kind of gave you so many more options, which I do like that, you know, because you add these together and you can just, I mean, look at this one here. Let's get rid of that, and we'll just duplicate this and flip it horizontally and put it together here. And now it kind of looks like a house, you know. So this is just kind of one more fun tool to create abstract looking shapes. So I wanted to point that out because it's brand new. Again, it will only work if you have the subscription, but I just thought that was kind of a fun thing to point out. So let's get rid of these for right now and go back, and I want to show you using the inspiration that I haven't worked on yet. I just want to illustrate quickly how I went about kind of deconstructing, reverse engineering, whatever you want to call it, to create some different patterns using inspiration, maybe not necessarily copying it exactly. So I kind of talked about how you need to look at things maybe a little differently. So I'm going to, just for fun, grab this heart, because if you remember, I thought that door that had the star shape on it, which this is not going to be star shape, looked like a heart with an X cut out of it. So I'm going to do it rounded right now. So I'm going to make this big enough so that we can see it. And let's see, it looks like it's a frame, so I need to duplicate this and I'm going to make this white so you can see, and I'm going to make it a little bit smaller so that it's a frame, and I'm going to select all, align, center. And then let's see, that frame's kind of wide, so I really should make this a little bit bigger. Select all, align, center. And that looks pretty good. So then I will do combine, subtract, and it's a frame now. And then it had kind of a cross thing in it. Let's see what we have in shapes. Let's try the plus sign just to be using basic shapes. And I need it to be at a 45-degree angle. Let's see, it kind of went like this. I know you can't see my inspiration picture because I'm on my computer. I want to make sure that I'm aligned horizontally. And I don't want these top parts, but I want this to be in there. I'm going to select all. I'm going to try slicing it. Okay, and I think this will work. Okay, I've sliced it, and I'm going to have to slice part of that off because I want to get rid of these top parts. But I want this to be united again. Combine, unite, because I don't want those little slits there. I'm going to take this, and I'm going to grab a square for my little cutter tool that I use, and I'm going to unlock it so that I can make it longer. And then I'm going to grab these two, combine, subtract. Now I have just this shape that I can put back in here. I almost need it to be a little bit bigger so that I can overlap. So I'm just going to make it a hair bigger. And again, select all, align, center horizontally. Now I have that overlapping just enough that I can combine, unite. Okay, so that's basically my shape that I needed. Do this 45-degree angle and duplicate it and flip it horizontally, and then grab these two and align them to the bottom. And then I actually, before I did that, I should have connected them here. Now grab them both, align them to the bottom, and they're just overlapping enough so that I can unite them. Unite. Okay, I want to make this a size that I can work with, so we're going to do 6 by 3. But I need it to be a tiny bit bigger, 0.1, because I need them to overlap. And then I'm going to lock that, duplicate it, Command D, flip it vertically, and put it up here to overlapping. Align left. And I have a 6 by 6 square. So that works out perfect. So now I can just combine, unite, and I have my shape that looks like that star kind of thing on the door. And of course it's kind of rounded because I used a heart. So these are not squares like on the door thing. But again, I made a pattern from an inspiration, but it doesn't look exactly like the pattern. So what I can do from here, that's all pretty thick for my stencil. I don't know that I want, my little grout lines to be that thick. So I may play around with that, start all over and make those thinner just for my my own kind of preference. If once I've uploaded this as a shape, I wouldn't be able to change the thickness of all of that. So I would want to play around with this and make my little cross pieces in the whole frame more the size of this width. I like that better. So I'm not going to do that now, but you get the idea of taking a shape or an inspiration and creating your own design. We could duplicate these and put them in a row, and you can then either, stagger them this way, so that these kind of line up. You can do them side by side like we've done and create a pattern, anything. And you can do multiple different you can lay it out differently and get different shapes like that, playing around with it. So what we want to do is save this shape because maybe we want to use it later, or maybe we want to incorporate it with other shapes into a new design. So let me get rid of this one. I've shown you this before, but I'm going to show it to you again just for the sake of repetition is the way you're going to remember something. So I have this shape. I can't just go up, you can't see this, but I can't go up to copy and paste because it's within this program. There's no place here, I can save that shape, but I'm saving it as a canvas, if that makes sense. It doesn't let me upload it to a canvas. It would just be part of that canvas. And that could work too. If I've saved this as a shape, when I pull it up. Let's just do that and I'll show you the difference. So if I save, I'm just going to call this part 1 and I'll save it to shapes and save. Okay, but then if I go up to my stuff, I have it there and I have other shapes. If I go over here to my shapes, that's where it's going to be. This is something that's uploaded, if you see that. Okay, so here it was. I've saved it. It's in my shapes. Now I can go back and I can customize that, and it's pulled it back up to to the canvas that this is on. So say I want to create a pattern, duplicate it, do something with it. Let's just do this for now. Then I can take this and I can save, but I don't want to just hit save because it's going to override what I already had. It's just going to resave this as Heart 1. So I want to hit save as, and it will automatically put that dash there. So I can rename it to, Hearts 2. And say that as a stencil. I can save it to my stencils and save it there. So I still have the shape. If we go back to my stuff and I go into shapes, I still have the shape there. If I go into stencils, I have this draft of a stencil that I started. Okay, so maybe I go back into here just for sake of showing you, and I'm going to say customize. Say I wanted to bring another previous shape that I had saved into this canvas. I would go to upload and upload an image. So it doesn't show those there because they're not uploaded. They were saved as a canvas, but I can't take from one canvas and add to another canvas. So I hope that makes sense. So what I need to do is I need to go back, and what I needed to have done is I needed to have saved this as an upload, not just saved it as a canvas. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to get off of there. I don't want my arrow here. I've done this before. Have your arrow off to the side because I'm going to take a screenshot. I'm going to do Shift Command 3 and it made a screenshot over here. Now I'm not going to grab that one yet. I need to grab it from my desktop because if you click it from here and try to crop it and all that, it doesn't work that way. It would put me in like markup where it would draw a line. Let me just show you what I mean. If I try to crop this, this is what I would do. And it doesn't. It's doing markup for some reason. So I don't want to be in this one. Don't save. It should be. What I want to do is I want to open it from the screenshot that is saved on my desktop, which is here. So I'm going to double click on that. And that is my shape. Now I'm in preview. You can't see this, but I have a toolbar at the top that says preview. You see my little crosshatch. I'm just going to do this and I'm going to crop that because I don't want all of this screen on there. So then I'll go up to tools. I know you can't see this, but I'm going to tools crop. Now all I have left is just the image that I want for my screenshot. So I can get out of that now. And if you see my desktop here, it's just that cropped image. So I'm going to get out of this. I'm going to go to new. Let's just go replace. Now I'm going to go to upload. I've done this before, upload an image. What doing the screenshot did was it made that be a JPEG, and you need these types of formats to upload. You can't upload just anything. So I can click on browse or I can drag and drop. So I will go browse, and on my desktop I should see that shape that I just created right here. That's screenshot, and you can rename it. I just didn't do that. So I'm going to open that. We've done this before. I'm going to click on simple just because it's black and white. I'm going to go to continue. I'm going to go remove background. And now you see all this stuff that just stayed in there from my screenshot. I don't know why it does that, and it just randomly picks things. You can erase those, and we've done this before too. So I'm just going to glide over all of that I don't want. Otherwise, that's going to show up in my stencil, and I can see a few dots here. Either that or it's on my screen. And that looks pretty good. We're going to go check it. There's a few stragglers here, but I think those will go away in the translation. We'll see. Okay, so I look here. I do still have a straggler. So I'm going to go back and grab my eraser. And I don't even see it on here, but we know it's there. So I'm just going to drag that across. I think it was right there. Okay, and we'll go apply and continue. and that looked pretty good. So I'm going to click on this one because I just want it a cut image, and I can give it a name here. So let's just call it Heart 1. Put it in Shapes and upload that. Okay, so now it's in my uploads. This is where I can grab different shapes that I have saved by just going through that same process. They can come from anywhere. They can come from anywhere on your computer. You can get it from an outside source, wherever. As long as it's just saved to your computer and you can find it again, then you can upload that. Now I can put that on a canvas, okay? And then I can do the same thing and grab another image. And we're going to be doing this in an upcoming video, but I just want to kind of reiterate this process. Let's just grab this one for the fun of it and show you how you can get two shapes that you've brought from outside and put them together. So, you know, that's just a tool that you're going to want to do for some of our more complicated designs, maybe some creative things we get from other, like I said, other sources, or like I said, ones that we've created. Because now if I get rid of this, you know, it's an object that I can't go and alter it except to maybe change its size. I can obviously add other shapes. Say I want this opening bigger. Let me make it bigger so you can see it. If I want this opening bigger, see, this is not quite perfect. I can go to Shapes, I can grab a square, I can overlay it here. This would make those lines thinner, and I can duplicate that and get them in all four corners. Let's get this adjusted kind of where we want it. I'm just eyeballing it, but again, you can do the math and get it perfect. I'm going to align these to the top, and then I'm going to duplicate them. I know they're not attached, but if I'm careful, I can just move them here. Let me go ahead and attach these because I want to be able to align them to the left so they're together, and that looks pretty good. Okay, so then I can select all, combine, subtract, and I can change the shape in that way. So now it's its own kind of new thing. So I could add circles to here if I wanted these to be more open, you know, that kind of thing. Maybe I want to do a little rectangle or a little diamond shape or something. So once you've saved a shape in your uploads, you can alter it, you know, to create something new. You just can't take it apart from how you originally created it, I guess is what I mean. So these are just some handy tools, again, to be able to do some different designs. And so I hope you learned something new in this one. This is kind of, like I said, putting this whole section of series into that whole repeated pattern category. And then I'm hoping to move forward. So if you have any questions or need me to kind of cover anything else or answer something that I may have missed, let me know in the comments, and then I'll make kind of a video overview of this, you know, first series with answered questions. I think the next section I'm going to call 2.0 because we're going to be getting into some different things, and we'll kind of move forward from there. So have a great rest of your day. Now go make something. Bye.